Hi everyone, this is Karolis Vyšniauskas. You're listening to another podcast. Today, a new episode in English. Our guest is Mark Adam Harold, a person who lives many different lives in the city of Vilnius. Some know him as a DJ and strong advocate for nightlife culture. Others know him as a political advisor, most famously for Aušra Maldeikienė when she was a member of the European Parliament. In 2015, Mark was elected to the City Council of Vilnius. It was a big deal because Mark was the first non-citizen of Lithuania to achieve that. As far as I remember him, Mark has always been very active on social media, always taking new fights there. But for the last couple of years, something has changed. Mark became quiet. It turns out he was doing a lot of work undercover. He worked as a ghostwriter of Lithuania's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gabrielius Landsbergis. Mark's job was very clear and very not typical. Basically, he needed to make Landsbergis' voice be heard on Twitter. And this unlikely duo achieved a lot of success. Landsbergis gained more than 100,000 new followers, mostly advocating for Ukraine's defense. With Mark's sharp editing skills, Landsbergis would tweet things like, "Putin never escalates when we help Ukraine. He escalates when we don't help enough." The last one, for example, gained 25,000 likes and was seen by more than 800,000 people. Those are numbers unheard for a politician in Lithuania. At the same time, Landsbergis became a very, very unpopular politician in Lithuania. After last election, his political career is essentially over. But his tweets remain. Did it make any difference though? Well, this is my interview with Mark Adam Harold, as recorded on Monday, 9th of December, 2024. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm very good. Looking forward to this.
Me too. Look, I know you for, I don't know for how many years, more than a decade. You are a person wearing different hats. But today we're going to talk about politics and your involvement in politics, in Lithuanian politics. And before we go to our main topic, I want to give our listeners more background information. So can you remind them of your first involvement in Lithuanian politics? What is the history that led us to this point?
Yeah, I can. It's a good story. I made a really big rave in Loftus, and we got a noise complaint. And I think it was actually from a trolley bus driver who was driving past, and he was disturbed. So this was ridiculous, and we were talking about how the noise laws are ridiculous, and someone made a joke that maybe I should try and be elected, and then I can change the laws and tell the police to stay away from the raves. And this was a joke, and then it became real. So I decided to run for election to the city council, and then it worked, and everyone was very surprised. So then I decided I had to start doing that job, seeing as I was elected.
Okay. And what followed after the municipality job?
Well, because I was in the municipality, I had to learn pretty quickly what politics is, and made a lot of connections with people. And this is the capital city, so I made connections with people at national level as well, even international level. Although it wasn't a plan, it worked quite well that I got a really good introduction to politics. By the way, I recommend to anyone that's interested, just run for city council. It's a really good learning experience, and maybe you'll even get to make some decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and for the last around 2 years, maybe even longer, you worked as an advisor for Gabrielius Landsbergis, the Minister Foreign Affairs. At the time when we are speaking, he's still the minister. How did you two find each other?
Yeah, that wasn't a plan either, but it was a dream. Like when I was working in local politics, and there was a lot of interesting international issues happening, and I'm foreign, so I'm quite familiar with other places in the world. And I'm familiar with Lithuania's role in the world and how people see Lithuania, what people think about Lithuania, or if they even know about Lithuania. So at some point, I think I decided to just reach out to Gabrielius. I was already working with some other people in his party, and it seemed like logical to just, why not? Let's try writing to him. So I wrote to him and said, maybe we should meet. Like, I don't know. It was totally unplanned, and I guess I assumed that it wasn't going to happen, but if you don't try, then it's definitely not going to happen.
Okay, so you approached him first.
Yeah, as far as I remember, it was definitely me that said to him, if you're interested in doing something, I'm available. But I didn't know what that was. And I had the dream that I could work in some kind of international communications. And I saw the Twitter account, and I had some thoughts about the quality of how Lithuanian politicians are communicating in English to the world. Mm-hmm. So again, more advice, like just go for it. If you have this dream job, then maybe ask the guy that can give you that job.
Okay. Do you remember how did you get the job?
Well, it was really weird that I was moving house, and so it was like the worst possible day. I was the most busy, moving house with a baby. And he called out of nowhere and said, hi, can we meet? And you know how it is. I thought, like, oh, typical, like you call them the worst possible day. I'm really sorry. I can't meet you unless you come to where I live, which is out of the city. And so he said, okay. And he came in his car with his lights flashing and his chauffeur and everything to my neighborhood, and met me for an hour, and we had a talk. And I just said, again, if there's something I can do, then I'm interested. But I didn't know what that was. Maybe he didn't. He just said, thank you, that's very interesting. And then I didn't hear anything for months. Then, very unfortunately, Russia decided to invade Ukraine even more. And that obviously made a huge change in Lithuanian foreign policy needs. It was no longer going to be some nice discussions with the European Union about some kind of human rights and finances. It was going to be war. And I think what happened was Gabrielius understood that he was going to need a different strategy and a different team to carry out that strategy. So he shuffled his team around, and I got the call, and he brought me in to do his communication in English.
Okay. And what was the task you were asked to do?
Well, at first it was like help him to write tweets.
Okay.
Like he didn't need my advice on geopolitics or anything like that. He's brilliant at that. So he needed my advice on how to package that up and how to present that to basically Western Europe and America, so that Lithuania would have a voice and would have some credibility.
Do you remember how many Twitter followers his account had at that time?
Yeah, he had like 40,000. I mean, with Twitter followers, you never know how many are bots and fake and inactive, but he had 40,000, which was a good start. And one of the most popular, I think, Lithuanian politicians on Twitter. So I just started rewriting his ideas for him. And I did one, I did another one, I did a third one, and it started to become quite regular. So I said, maybe you should pay me. And and then he did.
Yeah. So now Landsbergis' account has 138,000 followers.
Yes.
So you gained almost 100,000
Well,
followers.
we gained more than that, but then we lost some. I think as soon as all of the Russian bots went home after Trump was elected, we lost quite a few thousand.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You could see everyone experienced that. All the fake accounts just disappeared.
Okay. Yeah, but basically, the reason I wanted to talk with you, and I thought this was an interesting case of Landsbergis communication, is that, I use Twitter. A lot of people do that, and you see that his voice and Lithuania's voice was very heard. Like you are not used to seeing politicians having like, I don't know, 5,000 likes or like 10,000 even sometimes. And then you think, wow, this is pretty cool. Like we still remember the days when we had this problem with Lithuanian politicians that they actually couldn't really speak English. So now we are in a station where not only he can speak English, but he actually has something to say that people want to hear. Well, of course, you were the person, and we have to say you were working secretly, right? As like a ghostwriter. You were the person who sharpened the ideas, sharpened the speech. So that, of course, helped a lot. So what was your like process? How do you connect?
How do you write a tweet?
Basically, how do you write a tweet? Yeah. How do you make these ideas? How do you distillate them into a tweet that works?
Okay, a distillate is a very good word. Kind of Eastern European word, or Scottish word, let's say. So yeah, distillation is the point. I mean, on Twitter, there's obviously millions and millions and even billions of messages. So that cliche about the internet that, you know, you only get half a second to grab someone's attention, and that you're lost in a huge cloud of other stuff, including Russian bots and spam and scams. That's true, and it's even more true, I think, in politics for a country like Lithuania or any country that doesn't have nuclear weapons or fighter jets. It's very important that they make the communication as high quality as possible and as understandable as possible to the widest possible audience. So I never had any like political ideas. I wasn't a political advisor. So the idea always came from Gabrielius, and he would say, we need to push, for example, Germany to send tanks. Like, what are we going to do? And then he would come up with an angle, and he says to me kind of what he's thinking, and then I have to put that into a very, very short one sentence or two sentences. And as you can imagine, I get it wrong, and then he says, no, that's wrong, and we go backwards and forwards. So sometimes it was quite quick, but often I would say it took maybe 3 or 4 hours would be quite fast for a tweet, because he's flying, he's in a different country, he's in a different time zone. You know, he has to show it to his political advisors to check that he's not, doing anything against Lithuania's policy. It goes through a lot of filters. So when you see a tweet at the end, it's just a couple of sentences, and behind those couple of sentences, there might even be more work than for a speech. Because a speech, you have plenty of space to say the whole detail of your message. But in a tweet, you have to leave 95% out. And if you don't keep the correct 5%, then you can be completely misunderstood or just very uninteresting.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's how usually communication of politicians how it happens, especially with Lithuanian politicians, that it's not like they are not active on social media. It's more that they are just very formal, and some people would say boring. Maybe they're just playing it safe. With Landsbergis, you had a different ideas. Can you share what was your thinking behind the scenes?
I think because Landsbergis anyway is relatively young and brave and independent thinking, he really wanted to stand out. Whereas maybe other politicians want to blend in, or they don't want to make a mistake that would be really embarrassing, and screenshots everywhere. So they're very cautious. Gabrielius is very sensible, Like I had some really bad, crazy ideas that I'm very glad Lithuania did not put out into the world.
Do you want to share some of them?
No. But he would always say no. He would correct it. He would bring my energy down.
Okay.
But not all the way down.
Okay.
And he would sometimes let us take a risk and see what happens. And of course, those times were the times that we got 10,000, 20,000 likes because there was a tiny bit of risk in there. Most politicians don't put that risk in at all.
Can you give some examples of that?
I just think we were lucky because everyone else was boring, right? So traditionally on Twitter, it's even a joke that diplomats post a photo of themselves shaking hands with the Prime Minister of Moldova, and they put out a message saying, "I would love meeting the Prime Minister of Moldova. It was super interesting and very productive." And every time, it's always they loved the meeting. It was super interesting, very productive, and it's this diplomatic language, which is very interesting and very useful if you want to say nothing. But if you actually want to say something and still be diplomatic, then it can be like a very fine art. And because it takes so long, if the politician isn't really even interested in that, then they don't do it and they don't realize how important it is. So when we started, I think it was Gabrielius and maybe Šimanytė were quite big on Twitter. Linkevičius, the previous foreign minister, he did quite well on Twitter. But none of them had a native speaker editor. None of them had a writer who came out from outside their bubble. And none of them had an advisor from a foreign country who could check what kind of misinterpretations might be made by English speakers in other countries. It's very difficult. I couldn't write a book of the rules of how to do it. And when we were talking before, I said I think it's just a very lucky coincidence for Lithuania that Lithuania had this foreign minister and somehow had a British guy that wanted to write his tweets, and somehow they found each other, and therefore Gabrielius became definitely the most followed and popular foreign minister of the whole world.
Yeah. It kind of felt like Gabrielius and Estonian Prime Minister at that time, Karolis, that they became these Baltic voices in the English-speaking world, kind of representing our worldview and kind of our attitude, support for Ukraine, and very hard stance on Putin, on Kremlin, there was no both siding basically. So how did you? So now when we have a new Minister of Foreign Affairs coming, your job at least at this point is basically done. How do you evaluate that? What did you manage to achieve? And how we definitely have numbers. I said we have lots of new followers, which is good. But did you manage to convince? Did that communication manage to convince anyone?
That's obviously the best question, and maybe
the worst.
we can let's just spend the rest of the time answering that question. What actually happened? It's difficult to know. The best thing about Twitter, and especially for me, because I really need feedback. I need reassurance that I'm doing okay. I get very anxious and worried that I'm not doing good enough. So with Twitter, you immediately get that feedback. So you can see if this becomes the most popular tweet of that day about Ukraine, then you know that you've done a good job, because Lithuania's opinion about Ukraine was the most seen that day. If it changed people's minds afterwards, you don't really know. So I had to kind of focus on making sure that more people were following, more people were reading, more people were liking, and both of us spent a lot of time reading the comments. I know there's some politicians who just never read comments. Gabrielius read, I think, almost all of them.
Really?
Yeah, we would, I would screenshot a cool comment and send it to him, and he'd already seen it, And people were quoting him, which is really useful on Twitter. You can see when people take your tweet and add something to it. So, for example, if Garry Kasparov quoted him, then that led to even more thousands of numbers.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of assume that that's making a difference to people's opinion. But I'm sure we didn't get tanks faster to Ukraine. I'm sure we didn't change Macron's mind. I'm sure Biden never read any tweets. We know Blinken read them.
Really?
The foreign minister of America. Yeah, he for sure read them.
How do you know that?
We know that.
Okay.
And sometimes you can even tell. But it was because we know that because sometimes we were awkward. So Lithuania became famous, just like Estonia, for being called a hawk, and for always wanting war.
Yeah, but that's not a good thing, though.
No, but that, I think, made America nervous because, as it turns out, America and Germany, very early in this whole process, decided not to hurt Russia too much. So whenever we would make a tweet saying "hurt Russia," it would be awkward for Germany, for France, for America. There was a limit to how far we could go as a NATO member, and a small NATO member, dependent on NATO air defense and Baltic air policing mission. You can't scream and shout and demand things.
Yeah.
But what you can do...
I think it's a similar problem that Ukrainians themselves have, actually. Like Zelensky has a similar problem.
I think no. For Ukrainians, it's easier because, well, obviously not, the war's not easier, but tweeting is easier because they're Ukrainian. If they're angry and they're demanding in a very fast way, so supply us with things, we're dying. That's true. They're Ukrainians. They're dying. You can't really be too dramatic about being invaded by Russia.
Yeah.
If you're invaded by Russia, you can tweet whatever you want. Whereas for Lithuania, it's a bit more awkward because we haven't been attacked. So we can't appeal to that side of Western Europe reading and having sympathy for. Oh, poor Lithuania is a little bit worried. That we can't use that. So I think sometimes sometimes it was helpful that we also said we supported Ukraine, but I don't think we could ever really do more than Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they did a very good job and still are doing a very good job.
During this time when you were an advisor for Gabrielius, Twitter changed dramatically. I mean, the ownership of Twitter changed.
Yeah.
Elon Musk became a CEO. Even the name of Twitter, we're still using Twitter. We're saying tweets.
Yeah, but that's kind of a resistance.
Yeah, that's officially called X.
You can tell if you like, you know if you're going to like and respect someone. If they say Twitter.
Tweets, yeah. We're going to keep saying tweets. But I mean, I feel, I myself, I kind of feel like that I became kind of hostile to that space.
Yep.
On the other hand, now we are following events in Syria these days. And I still find myself going to Twitter and seeing what people are talking about Syria. So it's an important space, even though it's a space that is not nice space to be in. So how do you see the importance of Twitter at this day and age after it can we, and especially when all people are, when the algorithm is so has so much power, doesn't that communication just go to the void of internet? How do you see the value of it?
Twitter old Twitter was the official press release system of the world's diplomats and leaders. And when Musk took over, Gabrielius, and I'm sure many other politicians, wondered if they should really still be on that platform, because obviously the new owner is very, very pro-Russia, and maybe we should be boycotting. Of course, the argument that being on Twitter makes money for Elon Musk. No, it doesn't. So we're not contributing to Elon Musk's income because it's lost a huge amount of money.
But he gained a lot of influence.
But he gains a lot of influence, and also he can take a lot of Russian money and launder it by giving them blue ticks that boost their posts. That, you know, it's a very nice relationship. But because Twitter was so strong at being the official, like unofficial, but official place where diplomats and leaders put their press releases and compete for attention, that still goes on. So you've seen commercial brands leave, newspapers, traditional newspapers leaving in disgust.
Yeah, The Guardian did.
The Guardian, of course. But you haven't really seen politicians leaving.
Yeah.
They're still there. And I think one of the things Musk is right about is, like you said, when something happens in the world, you're not going to load up The Guardian and wait for them to start their live stream and wait for them to post what happened 10 minutes ago. It's just not, it's not quick enough.
Yeah.
And if you go to Twitter, you can spend an hour reading disinformation and nonsense, but you feel like you're in the stream of information.
Yeah.
And if you're actively using Twitter, then of course you're filtering out the nonsense. Like when you see 100 pro-Russian tweets, it doesn't make you love Russia if you're thinking while you use Twitter. The problem is that if you're just casually scrolling, then you will see the most horrific disinformation and nothing really to counter that. So the only reason I know what's disinformation is because I get information from other places, right? Not from Twitter. If you only look at Twitter, especially during a crisis, then you're not going to learn more than you would learn if you just waited half an hour and read a newspaper that's been written by professionals and fact-checked and filtered.
Yeah.
It's not very exciting to wait half an hour, is it?
Yeah. I feel like when the war in Ukraine, when the full-scale war in Ukraine started by Russia, then basically at the exact same moment, the fight between narratives started as well. Like, and I see them as basically there were two narratives. One was that it's all NATO's fault and Russia is defending, with the narrative that is completely makes no sense in this part of the world, but we are living now. But for someone in the US, for example, someone who is very suspicious towards all the American foreign policy, it can make sense. I can understand how it can make sense. And there's another narrative that is is most popular in Lithuania and in our part of the world, is that, well, Russia invaded yet another country and we have to fight back and we have to support the people who are fighting back. So yeah, I feel like the narrative is who started this. Did Russia start it or did NATO start it? As I said, here we have no both sides. There's no both sides here, and I think it's good. But on the online spaces, on Twitter, on Reddit, wherever, there are these debates happening. So, and of course, with Trump election, you can see that the vibes kind of changed. You can, in year 22, you could have Zelensky becoming Time Person of the Year, and everyone was really fascinated by Ukrainians' resistance and the power that they show, the solidarity. And now the narrative that Ukraine just keeps getting money from America. Why American taxpayers need to pay for that? You have someone like Joe Rogan just saying on his like most popular podcast in the world, saying like F Zelensky. Like you couldn't imagine that like 2 years ago, and I kind of. I mean, with all the success of like keeping the Baltic narrative there, you still see that, man, we are not winning, because Ukraine is not winning, because, I mean, they are not losing, but they are not winning as well also. And that creates this very bittersweet moment that, yes, our voice is heard way better. Yes, Gabrielius did a good job with your help and the whole team, but we are still not winning. How do you see that from the inside?
Yeah, that's true. I also, like I said, I think a lot about whether or not we're actually making any difference, because my job is to help make a difference. I know that it would be worse if we didn't do this. So maybe we haven't got F-16s to Ukraine 3 months earlier because of our tweets. But maybe we did. I mean, how would you know? Like, maybe they weren't planning to do it, but we put a bit of pressure on. Other people saw our pressure. They put a bit more pressure on. You know, Macron walks into the room and says, "Hey, guys, are we doing this?" You know, look at Twitter. You know, I presume that we had influence. I don't know if that made any major changes in any decisions, but I presume we had influence. And the second thing, which is maybe should be the first thing, is we see thousands, literally thousands of comments from Ukrainians, from Georgians, thanking, thumbs-upping, writing base Lithuania and putting Lithuanian flag. Thank you, Lithuania. I want to learn Lithuanian because I love you people. Gabrielius is hot. like, you just see all of these messages of positivity and hope and thanks and energy. And you know wars are won and lost on morale, right? So maybe we didn't change Biden's mind, but I think we were a big part of keeping morale going in Ukraine. We know from Ukrainians that if they see a foreign country supporting them, it means the world to them, literally the world. And we did that more than anybody else. So I think that's the best answer. Did we make a difference? Yeah, we made a difference because there is so many people we showed they're not alone and they should keep going. And unfortunately, it turned out that they needed to keep going for years and years.
You're listening to Not a Podcast. Today, our guest is Mark Adam Harold, a ghostwriter of Gabrielius Landsbergis, Lithuania's now former Minister of Foreign Affairs. I feel like in Lithuania we have a lot of these conversations, like how do we communicate with the Western world?
Yeah, ask a foreigner to do it for you. Really? I'm here 20 years and I've done quite a few jobs of like this where for some reason one of the only Lithuanians in the whole country that thinks it's important to communicate in correct English called me and I helped them out. And sometimes maybe I just corrected one word. You know, you delete the where there shouldn't be the.
Yeah.
And instantly the whole sentence looks like native speaker instead of looking like Eastern Europe. So there were very few people that understood that, but the ones that understood that found me somehow. And I realized how big a difference you can make to this. And you just need to go to Gabrielius' Twitter if you want to know what I'm talking about. I remember on Facebook, I did a huge post. It's not a tweet, is it, on Facebook? A huge post criticizing Gabrielius' Twitter. I think this might have been when I wanted to get the job. So I made a post like, look at Gabrielius' Twitter. It's awful. It's embarrassing. It's cringe, you know. And a lot of people were replying, but Mark, you don't understand. It doesn't matter. You know, the content is more important than the delivery. And it's great to see that she's writing it herself. And we really respect her. She doesn't hire a writer. And these comments were all from Lithuanians. So I said, okay, that's what you think about her Twitter, but you're the least important people to judge Grybauskaitės Twitter. It doesn't matter really what Lithuanians think of that. They don't read it, and it's not directed at them. So why don't you ask foreigners what it looks like? And every foreigner who's a professional writer who you show Grybauskaitės Twitter will think this is just horrifically cringy amateur Eastern European stupidity. And we know that she's not stupid, right? But I was telling you before, when I speak in Lithuanian, I know it comes out with mistakes, it's slower, it's not fluent, and anyone listening just kind of gets the idea that maybe I'm stupid and I don't know how to speak. You know? It's difficult to turn that part of your instincts off and to keep telling yourself, you know, Grybauskaitės, you know, a world-famous leader, she's done high-powered jobs, she's obviously intelligent, but what is this tweet? Like, is she stupid?
Yeah.
No, she's not stupid. Well, maybe she's too stupid to hire a foreigner to write it for her, or too proud. Shimonita, as well, as far as I know, doesn't value communicating in English to foreigners. So the thing that Karolis and Landsbergis did, I think, was they were focused on foreign policy. And other foreign ministers are maybe focused on the popularity of their party at home, or the opinion of people at home. And the interesting thing about Gabrielius is he doesn't need to care about the opinion at home, because he's literally the least popular politician in the country, and like we're not fighting to keep him at the top of the ratings.
Yeah.
It's like nothing to lose kind of position.
That's an interesting...
So we just wrote for the foreign audience, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of seeing that, because when you look at Gabrielius' ratings back home, it's like people just want to... I mean, he's at the very bottom. Like
he's actually very interestingly low.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's so low. Like, he unites the country. You know, it's like only like 18, 12, but like what percentage of people actually think he's doing a good job is like, wow.
It's like people like Žemaitaitis are like way higher. It makes no sense. But like, but to him, like his political career at this point, like is kind of over. I mean, at least like he left he got a seat at parliament and he rejected it, and he's like left the leaders of the party position. So what does that say? That a politician can say all these things that we feel that, okay, we have to speak for the Baltics and this is what has to be said. And then maybe people at home are like, nope. And does that mean that they actually don't support that message? Or does that mean that they think that he just abandoned us here and he's doing something there at, I don't know, going to Yale University, meeting students and enjoys a good life rather than doing something for us?
Yeah, that's interesting that people assume he enjoys a good life, right? Because he flies to different countries and he meets all these important people and probably eats a lot of expensive food in restaurants. Well, no, that's not how it works. He works harder than anyone I've ever seen. The whole flying around the world thing, really, if you have to do 10 flights in 4 days, that's not glamorous or fun. That's horrific. And then after all of that, you have to go on TV and try and not look tired while you answer questions about a war.
Yeah.
This is a ridiculously hard job. So I don't think anyone knows how hard it is. So he doesn't get any credit for doing a hard job, right? That's one thing. He works his ass off and doesn't get the credit for that because people don't see it as a difficult job. I also, I guess, I didn't see it, but then when you're talking to him every day and you know how tired he is and how much stuff he's done and how important his next meeting is, it's incredible. I don't know how anyone does that job, and even he probably couldn't do it for another 4 years. It requires 150% of a person's energy, and it requires a huge amount of moral decisions. So you're not deciding whether or not to open or close this factory so that your profit can be bigger or smaller. You're not deciding what kind of election campaign you want so you can win more or less votes. You're often having to decide about genocide. There's ethnic cleansing happening. What do you do? This is not like a simple question that you can go to university and study how to answer this, right? So that also, I think that people in Lithuania don't see that side of it. They don't see what goes into making those decisions. They don't see us like arguing for 4 hours over one word. They don't, and if they did, they wouldn't think that's work, right? Do you think that's work?
Oh, of course, but I mean...
So you're a professional writer.
No, but I work with words, so yeah.
So if you don't work with words, you assume it's very easy, right? You just sit down and you write some words. That's easy. If you're working in a coal mine, digging coal, that's hard. Yeah, of course, everyone knows that's hard. But it's hard. It's difficult to think that writing is hard work, you know? So he doesn't get that. But also, everywhere... It's a cliche that foreign policy doesn't win you any votes at home and no one's interested in it. In Lithuania, of course, maybe more than average, people are interested in that. But we've measured how many people are interested in that. It's the number of people that approve of Gabrielius in surveys, right? So it's like, I don't know, 15% something. 15% of people who see the value in that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're Žemaitaitis and you stand up and you say the government's rubbish and I can help you have a better life, that's going to appeal to a lot of people. If he stood up and said, I'm going to make sure that Lithuania is blowing up on Twitter, like it would be a joke, right? No one cares except for me.
And your position is, and your whole place in politics is also very interesting because you're not a politician, like a traditional politician. First I got to know you as a DJ, as a promoter, as someone who organizes music events in Lithuania. And then you went to politics, but I'm not sure if you ever studied that at the university. And I feel like your attitude, the way you do the political communication is very different than people who are like, I don't know, they who go the traditional path. Did you?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm not afraid of making ridiculous, loud, embarrassing mistakes, which other people don't do. And then I try and somehow make my massive attention-grabbing mistake add to my influence so that I can get a little bit of something done. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. That's a fact. Yeah, I'm sure everyone can see that. Sometimes it works anyway. Sometimes you're lucky. And I think if I'd learnt politics, I would be worse in politics because then I would be like all those other guys who are formal and dry. All these things people have told me that they learnt in TSPMI, and it's rubbish. It's not true. It doesn't work in the real world, but they keep telling me.
For example,
Mark, you can't do that. Even just for, like you said about the formality of tweets, right? So sometimes, he used the word based once, and this is controversial. Like the foreign minister is using like slang.
Oh, based. Yeah.
In his tweet, he's like talking with NAFO like cartoon dogs on social networks. It was one of the most successful things we did. But if you rewind 5 years and say, oh yeah, in 5 years' time, Gabrielius Landsbergis is going to be on Twitter talking to cartoon dogs and using slang. You wouldn't believe that. Also, you probably wouldn't believe that Mark Adam Harold is going to be doing anything to do with diplomacy, because he's like the least diplomatic figure after Žemaitaitis, I don't know anything about diplomacy being like keeping quiet when you're supposed to. I really can't do that. I have ADHD, so my brain can't do that. So I think the reason why it was successful is because Gabrielius is very, very good at the things I'm very bad at. And when you put the two of us together and you get the slightly risky communication, but the very sensible diplomacy and huge knowledge of what's going on in every other foreign office in the world, then you get something. Then you get something special. And I don't think I could work with other people and it would be the same magic. I think it's the two of us together that are good. And if I try now and go and do tweets for the next foreign minister, it's not going to happen. They're not going to ask me, but and I'm not going to say yes because they're anti-Semites. but in theory, if I now try and do the same thing, like if a politician calls me tomorrow and says, "Hey, Mark, I'm like economy minister of Lithuania. Can you make me blow up on Twitter?" I probably can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know what I would do.
So you've been doing this job for 2.5 years, something like that?
It's about 2. I mean, it started slowly and weirdly. So yeah, on contract, I think it's 2 years.
Okay. So how did it look practically? Like, how did you communicate with Gabrielius?
So this is like one of the biggest privileges in my very privileged life, is that I got the experience of talking to the country's top diplomat in NATO and the EU in the capital city pretty much every day, more or less. There would be some kind of either I sent him a funny meme, or he sent me a funny meme, or we spent 4 hours doing a tweet. But there was always something going on, because it was very important, of course, for me to know the mood. Like I'm vibes. I'm the vibes department, right? So if I don't constantly talk to someone, then I'm not going to pick up the vibes. And also, I think it was important for him to have a place where he could talk about ideas without being on the record.
Yeah.
And I've done advice for, I think, 3 or 4 politicians now, and there's always a little bit of psychological assistance going on, where you can like absorb maybe the tiredness and the anger of that day, or you can process an idea that they are having trouble thinking about, and they're maybe a bit afraid, and you can say, "Don't be afraid," or there's these politicians are humans, right? And you only ever see them on Delphi Antraster.
Yeah.
Like you get a very weird view of them. But I've had that privilege of the experience of talking to a foreign minister as he negotiates a war. Like, he's talking to the most important people in the world about genocide. So this is like a really big deal. And I never expected to get in that position. But somehow, magically, it happened. And I, to put it bluntly, didn't fuck it up. Didn't get fired.
Yeah.
And we're still going. So, I mean, I hope we do something else in the future. I have no idea what. I'm not a plans guy. But I think we found some way of working together. And again, like, there's so many people in Lithuania that have worked with me and probably will tell you that I'm terrible and never work with that guy, doesn't know what he's doing. Like he's angry all the time. That's how it looks like to most people. And sometimes I am just angry all the time, and I'm not very good at my job. But in this specific set of circumstances, we produced this amazing result that couldn't have come about from any other two people on the planet. It's special.
Yeah.
And thank God that happened to Lithuania, right? Not not Latvia.
And how does it feel for you to be basically the ghostwriter? I feel like a lot of people who are in the business of writing, they do that because they want their names to be there. They want the book and their name on the cover. You want that byline. It's an ego thing.
Yeah.
And you put your ego aside. It's all Gabrielius.
Again, a surprise, right? Mark Adam Harold decided to put his ego aside. I think that's probably why I did it, because it was the first time where the pressure wasn't on me, the focus wasn't on me. Delphi aren't writing about my mistakes. I don't have to go into meetings and pretend to be someone I'm not. I just have to become the best version of Gabrielius in English that Gabrielius in English can be. And I enjoyed the fact that it was ghostwriting and that no one knew.
Yeah.
And therefore I didn't have this pressure. Also, it's true that I'm an immigrant. I love Lithuania. I chose to come here and I chose to stay here. And my future is very much dependent on Lithuania's future. I have a daughter. You don't want her in a war, you know? So to be able to do something for Lithuania after so many things that I've done for myself or for my own publicity or for my own aims or to bring people to my raves or to get people to follow me on Facebook. And I think I just got a bit older and I wanted to leave all of that behind or push it aside. Do something that I know God is watching and God knows this is good work, and not do something purely for people to pay attention to me. And it coincided with having a daughter. As I said, I moved house, had a daughter, and this opportunity came up to do something without the pressure of being looked at. And I left the council. I mean, I could have tried to be elected for a second time in the council, but I didn't like being the focus. And I think I figured out that I'm never going to be a good politician, especially in Lithuania in a different language. So maybe it's better if I advise other politicians and then they can use the best bits of me.
Yeah.
And I can avoid all of the ridiculous tappiness, Facebooking and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, but by the way, maybe the main reason was because I'm British. I grew up with James Bond. So for 2 years, I could tell people, I work for the Foreign Office, but I'm not allowed to tell you what I do. That's pretty gangster, right? Like, if they found out what I do, it wouldn't be so cool. So it was really cool that it was a secret.
Yeah, it's cooler as a secret that you say I would just write tweets for. That actually sounds pretty cool. It sounds pretty cool. Yeah, the future. I mean, that's what we all interested in, because the thing, I mean, these past almost 3 years is the fact that we don't know the future. I mean, we never know the future, but when the war is happening, it's something different. And I feel like in Lithuania, we kind of got used to it, but it's still there. The nervousness is still there. And I feel like you always want to you see processes and you try to think like, hey, is this a good development or not? And it seems that every development that is happening is not really good. Like we see a new like elections in Lithuania. I mean, again, Žemaitaitis case, not good. You see elections in the US, Trump's thing. I don't know, maybe some people would argue that it's somehow good. I don't know. I feel like you have someone like J.D. Vance being like vice minister and vice president, and he basically said that I don't really care what happens to Ukraine. He said that like a couple of years ago, but still. So, I mean, we are here, we're in Vilnius, trying to build our futures. You're a father now. You have a daughter. You want a future for her. What do you see in the future after these years of advising the Minister of Foreign Affairs? Because you are in the loop, and maybe you know something that you cannot even say. But like, what's in your head? How do you, before we're going to enter 2025, like in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, predictions of the future in geopolitics in 2025. Yeah, I would be a fool to try and predict anything.
No, just what's happening in your head.
I'm naturally an optimist in everything. I don't know how to be any other way, but like, a couple of years ago, Gabrielius started saying that things don't look very good. It looks like maybe Germany isn't really helping, and maybe America's gonna get a bit tired of helping, and maybe they don't even want to help. Maybe they just want to go back to business as usual with Russia, and maybe they've even done a deal with Russia saying, look, we're not going to let them bomb you and you don't bomb us, okay? Like maybe that deal happened. And then it all went really wrong, and it's a massive disaster, and we're not back to normal with Russia. And thank God we're not back to normal with Russia. So being an optimist is now a bit difficult. But I try to still be optimistic. Syria just happened yesterday as we're recording this. I also believe that things have to get worse before they get better. I believe that if you want to tackle anti-Semitism, maybe you need to have a Žemaitaitis come along and make it so bad that then it has to be dealt with. And all of the people come out and, standing outside Parliament, thousands of people suddenly against anti-Semitism. Well, I mean, I've been in politics for 10 years arguing against anti-Semitism, and no one's been interested. It's just, don't worry, Mark, don't talk about that. Don't draw attention to those people, So nothing got fixed.
Well, Škirpa Street is no longer there.
Škirpa Street is no longer.
We will always have that.
I had, one win. But it's so small, it's almost a joke. Like, we had to argue to change Škirpos Aleja's name. I mean, and we had to argue with a lot of the conservative politicians who are now suddenly very against anti-Semitism. So I'm saying I think sometimes it has to get worse, unfortunately, and maybe this Trump thing, it can't get much worse than that, right? So my optimist says that we've reached the bottom. Trump will try and do this Trumpy stuff. It's definitely not going to work. I mean, we know he's not going to end the war in one day. We know that. He knows that. He stopped even saying that. He's gone back on that. So maybe Trump is so bad that it will end up being good. But all the time we're talking about this, people are still dying for no good reason. Like, it could be stopped, but it's not being stopped. And we're just waiting for it to get so bad and then the world will change. Like, remember when a hospital got bombed and everyone thought that day, oh, that's horrible. Like, it's children's hospital, they're trying to recover from cancer and they got bombed. Surely now the world will understand. But no, the world's forgotten about that. It needed to be something worse than bombing a children's hospital. That's not enough, apparently. So yeah, I'm optimistic that things will be fine. I don't think we're going to have a nuclear war, and that's all rubbish. But I think it's even possible that Lithuania could get invaded, because if we keep going this way of the big Western powers who have all of the guns not understanding the situation and not being interested, then we have a really big problem. Like, there's just no way that Lithuania can make bomb factories fast enough to build enough bombs before Russia reorganizes after winning half of Ukraine. I wouldn't. I don't want to be on that timeline. Basically, I really don't want to be on that timeline, and I think it's a. Let's put it this way: it is a huge risk that everything I've worked for in Lithuania and built for 20 years, and everything Lithuania has worked for 30 years, can just be destroyed in a day, and it's a huge risk that that might actually happen. There's several believable, credible ways that that could happen. And already, like, planes are falling out of the sky and we don't know why. I mean, this is the beginning of this stuff. It's already started.
You think so?
Well, it's exactly how it started in Georgia and in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Just piece by piece.
I think when you mentioned the plane, I think when that happened, everyone was like, no, let's not blame Russia for this.
Yeah.
Because it can feel like, I don't know, conspiratorial thinking.
Yeah.
You're not...
Come on. Like, if by coincidence a DHL plane from Leipzig, where there'd just been an attempted sabotage, falls out of the sky just because of a technical fault that happened to happen at the same time in Vilnius, like, no, that would be the most amazing coincidence ever. Like, that would be stunning. Maybe it is a coincidence, but that would be like two galaxies hitting each other kind of coincidence. So I don't think that, but the point is that that's how it starts. Like, it has already started. Russia's invasion of Lithuania began quite a long time ago. And they start with cyber attacks. They start with, taking down the Defense Ministry website for half an hour, things like that. Those things have been happening for a long time.
Yeah.
And gradually it gets more. Plane falls out of the sky. Nobody knows why. What's the next thing to happen? A rocket landed on Latvia, landed on Romania, could land on Lithuania. How is NATO going to respond? Maybe they're going to do nothing, So this is, unfortunately, we're very close to it turning into the full-scale invasion. But we're already in the invasion. Russia is already here. Russia is even in parliament, right? So that's begun as well. And how many steps are we away from changing the constitution and ending up with a dictator? We're not many steps away from that.
You think so? You're talking about Lithuania as if it's like Hungary or, I don't know, even Georgia. Like, we always feel like we are supporting, people in Georgia. And we always feel like we were there or we could have been there. But luckily we joined NATO, we joined EU earlier, and we are much, sounds like...
So that's the problem, because we think it's done. We think it's like a process that you go through and then it has a finish and you win and then you're safe forever. And I also thought that about NATO and Article 5 and collective defense. But we found out that maybe Article 5 isn't actually... Maybe it doesn't even really exist, These things are only
the whole point of
these things are only on paper, and they're very fragile. Like, I'm not talking about even Lithuania being vulnerable. Democracy itself is a thing you have to work very hard on all the time. Like, if I've learned one thing from 2 years of foreign affairs, it's how fragile and imaginary democracy is. It only works because we all just agree that it's going to work. And if someone comes along and breaks it or hacks it and finds a way to knock a chunk off it, then the whole thing just crumbles, because very, very quickly you go from I love Lithuania and I want my country to be economically successful to I need to save my family, whatever that takes. And when you get that, you've lost the state, right? So if I need to save my family, whatever it takes, then that's like my physical safety, my biological safety. It's not anymore an argument of ideas or a debate about who should be the prime minister and who should not be the prime minister. Now it's become blood, literally. And that's a very different scenario. And that's unfortunately the scenario that I have friends in Ukraine and Georgia that are in that stage. And I think a lot, what would I do? And I don't know. And I think anyone that says they know is also in an illusion. We are like, you've seen in Syria, how long did that take? It's like 10 days from things looking completely fine for the dictator to him running away. Same in Ukraine. It doesn't take long for that final collapse to happen. And maybe people in Lithuania think they're safe without having to keep doing the work. And I would encourage everyone listening to this, do more work than you're doing now. And I say this to myself as well. Like, what can I do something more now, today? Have I got spare capacity to try and do something that makes Lithuania strong, so that there's less chance that I will have to make those decisions about my family and my life.
Mm. And what work would that be?
Well, I mean, I would recommend Snyderism. I think Timothy Snyder has written the best and most accessible and shortest ADHD-compatible guide to what to do, an essay of 10 points. And it's things like it's strengthening civil society, basically. Even if you just form a book reading club with 3 friends, that's making society stronger than it would be without that. So whatever you can do to make connections with other people stronger, that's going to make Lithuania stronger if we ever need to resist the full-scale invasion.
Yeah. I remember your sounds like your profile picture from some years ago, Lietuva visiems, right? That was like having, not only have a society that people are connected, but that is open to people from all kinds of life, different nationalities, different ethnicities. And I feel like that kind of thing, as we are becoming more scared of what can happen, we also are becoming more close to others, or at least to those others who are not like, we see that they are not like us. And I feel like this I'm worried about these tensions inside of society, where we will see, okay, I'm Lithuanian, I will defend the country, and you are just an immigrant. And I mean, in your case, it kind of feels like you working for Gabrielius, you also want to prove that, hey, I'm an immigrant. And you are one of those immigrants. I mean, you speak Lithuanian, you've been here for, 20 years. We meet you in the street, no one thinks that you're not one of us. So you are, but I kind of feel like you still want to prove that, hey, guys, I'm with you. I will help you if something will happen. So I'm worried about this, I guess, anti-immigrant statement that goes hand in hand with like strengthening national security. In some people's minds.
I think there's a lack of leadership, so that people don't really know what to do, or they don't know what's best. And then they run towards all of those old cliches of, ultranationalism or misogyny. Like, there are a number of people now that are blaming women for everything.
Really?
Yeah. Like, you're not on Twitter, right?
I try.
Wow, go on Twitter.
It's a hostile place.
Wow, and all this Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, he's got like 10 kids by 5 different women and stuff like that, and that's being glorified. I definitely did this job with pride and feeling like it's an honor to do it for Lithuania, even if nobody knows. I know God is watching. And I know that I needed to prove myself to Lithuania. I've done a lot of criticism of Lithuania, which I think is perfectly fine in a democracy, right? But it's kind of annoying if there's this immigrant that's constantly saying things are bad. I don't want to be that guy. And it's difficult for me to show the other side of myself, which loves Lithuania. I'm not going to just start posting like with Lithuanian flags and my baby girl and all of that stuff. So what can I do to prove to you people that I love this place and you're awesome and you can do stuff in the world and you're interesting to other people if you package it up in the right way? And what can I do to show that loyalty? I've had my hand on the constitution and I've sworn to defend the Lithuanian constitution. You know, I think I need to remember that and find a way to do that better than all of the other ways I've tried to do it. So this is like an apology for all of the bad things I did. Like I genuinely, when I'm like criticizing Škirpa, for example, and there's all these people saying that are insulted and they think I'm trying to destroy Lithuania and they think I'm paid by Russia to come here and to create trouble and to be gay everywhere and put rainbows on Facebook, you know. People really think that, and I don't disregard that. Like I feel bad about that. Like I don't want people thinking that hurts me. And I want to find a way to prove to people that it's not true. And I wanted to change Škirpos Leos Pavadinimus because it's a good thing, not because I'm an asshole. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
but I know how it looks. I know how I look. I'm a consultant on how things look, right?
Yeah.
How people appear.
Yeah.
So if I analyze myself, I realize that sometimes I can appear very negative and bad, and destructive. And you're right. I guess maybe I wanted to do this job for the reason that I wanted to prove that I love Lithuania.
Interesting that you feel like you need to prove that, because the way I see you is, okay, so you have that thing with Tapinas some time ago where you wrote an angry Facebook post saying basically, F you, Lithuania, for doing this and that, and then you apologized, and then Tapinas got that and said, hey, like, and you were a member of city council?
Yeah, I was
and you were
actually.
like, who is this person saying, like, that's...
Ardera.
Ardar. But this was like how many years ago?
At
least 8. I don't know. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of feel everyone forgot about it.
Yeah,
but it's still, in your head, you still have to prove.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess one of the reasons I had to stay secret while I'm working for Gabrielius is because there's a lot of people that would love to criticize him for that, right? Imagine that British guy, that Mark. What? Working for Gabrielius? And like, no, he's a Russian spy, or he's like, you know, he's going to make everyone gay, or like, you know, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it ended up making perfect sense, and I'm sad that I can't carry on doing this like forever. I'm going to have to find something else now.
Well, I feel like one of the criticism that is valid, I don't know if actually people say that to you, but I was thinking in my head that there's this maybe, how can I put it? Like you coming from Britain to Lithuania kind of feel, especially like 20 years ago, now we are all like travel the world. We kind of feel stronger about we feel stronger as like world citizens. I know our English language is better. We know how it is in other countries. But I don't know, 20 years ago you come here and it feels like you almost have this, you allow yourself to judge, saying like, hey, you do this wrong, your grammar is bad, you do your I don't know. And
your tweets suck.
Yeah, and maybe you do that in a good faith, like, hey, you can do better. But I think some people will be like, who is this guy coming from like, I don't know, richer, much richer country, and saying to us that basically we don't know nothing. That, and I think like in Lithuania, there's that people deep inside, they think that actually, yeah, maybe I cannot do anything. Maybe I'm not good at anything. I feel like maybe it's just a human thing, but maybe in Lithuanian culture, we tend to kind of do this, like poke each other and saying, maybe you're not that good actually. Oh, you think you're good or you're not. We have that culture, and I feel like you coming and saying, hey, maybe actually not that good actually. It's, people can think like, oh shit, like now when the British guy told us that, maybe he's right. And I think that's how people see
You know
you.
what it is? It's like if I if I say Lithuania is bad, everyone screams, "How dare you say that? Lithuania is amazing." And if I say Lithuania is amazing, everybody says, no, Mark, you don't understand. Lithuania is really bad.
That's funny. It kind of reminded me of the case of, an infamous case of Andrius Užkaldis, who came back from living in the UK for some time and say, okay, now Lithuanians, I'm Lithuanian, but
I've been to the top of the mountain and I come back with the knowledge.
And I will tell you how you all suck. And that worked for him for some time. Mm-hmm. And then everyone was like, who the hell is this guy telling us that we suck? He himself sucks. And I feel like that when people in Lithuania started to just disregard Užkaldis and saw him for all his nonsense, that what he does, that's when we grew up as a society. And
that's an interesting indicator that you've chosen, but I actually think that's quite a good indicator. There was that era, of Vyšniauskas and Užkaldis and Tapinas all on the rise, like we're the new generation of people that understand the West, and we're not communists, and but also they're kind of angry men, and they, unfortunately for them, they were born at the worst time. Because when they were supposed to be learning in their 20s, like in university, learning what the world is, Lithuania was a complete bankrupt disaster. So they didn't have opportunities. Mm. And then by the time they got the opportunities, they were kind of too old, and everyone's calling them boomers now, So they missed it, and I think that really hurts. And I think it's definitely true that I came from Britain, which is imperialist. The Soviet view of Britain is that we're imperialists, So it's natural that people would think, this British guy's coming, he's an imperialist. People call me that all the time.
Really?
Yeah. It's the standard. Well, if they're over like 40, 50 years, it's like, you don't understand what it's like to live under occupation, Mark. No, I don't. But you don't understand what it's like to live in Britain. So we need to have dialogue here, not just I don't understand things. Like, there's a side of it that you don't understand. And sometimes you don't understand how good Lithuania is or how good Lithuania looks.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't possibly understand that because you have to know that from outside.
Yeah.
But taking advice from outside, I think, is difficult for any nationality of person.
Totally. But thank you for doing that advice on behalf of Lithuania. You're forgiven.
So, yes.
You are forgiven.
Sorry I did it in a slightly wrong way.
Thank you so much for coming today. And let's hope that scenario that you talked through, and that makes perfect sense, that there are forces in the world that will not let that happen. We all a bit scared, and I think that a way to confront that is be kind to each other and be more, I don't know, just support each other, support Ukraine, of course. So thank you for coming to the studio and reminded us of that case. And thank you for all that time on Twitter. I mean, it was a ride.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to answer questions that nobody asked in 20 years. Okay. Thank you very much.
See you in 20 years, Mark. That is our show today. You heard the interview with Mark Adam Harold, a ghostwriter of Gabrielius Landsbergis, Lithuania's former Minister of Foreign Affairs in the time of Russia's war in Ukraine. The episode is recorded at Martynas Mažvydas National Library in Vilnius. The sound engineer here is Justina Shimonita. The episode is supported by the Perspectives Project, bringing newsrooms from 7 Central and Eastern European countries together and supporting independent reporting in this part of Europe. Our podcast music is composed by Martynas Gailius, and for additional work on the episode, I want to thank Audra Skodaitė, Denis Vėjas, and Austėja Puraitė. As always, please support Nara work at nara.lt About section. You can find all the information how to do that. Thank you all who do that. My name is Karolis Vyšniauskas. We will be hearing each other in the next year as well. But for now, happy holidays to you all, stay safe and stay strong.